Dayanita, welcome. We're so happy to have you join us.
I
I can
am
already
too.
see an amazing number of participants. And if you are here, we would love to know where you're tuning in from. So already Canada and Hawaii, which is great. Hawaii, that's pretty early in the morning. Almost as early as Dayanita is late. Dayanita, you want to say where you're tuning in from, and then Michael and I will share the same?
New Delhi, 10:30 at night.
Great.
Brooke.
Well, I'm in Chelsea, 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
And I'm in Brooklyn, same time zone.
But wow, the Netherlands, Mumbai, Tennessee, Los Angeles, Cincinnati, London, Hyderabad. Anyway, great. We are so
Wow.
happy to see Switzerland, Lima, Philadelphia, Santa Fe, Princeton. Oh my gosh, what a
Amazing.
great crew. So, I guess the best way to begin is to say that when we started the Aperture PhotoBook Club, this was what we dreamed of, a worldwide community of people who are interested in talking and learning about photo books together. And of course, it surprises me not at all that Dayanita, who has done more to expand our understanding of what a photo book is, it really surpasses all others. So we're thrilled to have you here with us today.
Thank
As for
you.
those of you who are tuning in for the first time because you just wanted to hear Dayanita, if you don't know anything about Aperture, we are a nonprofit publisher. We were founded in 1952 by an amazing group of artists and writers and thinkers, including Ansel Adams and Dorothea Lange and Minor White. And they were committed to addressing what they saw as the vital need to communicate with serious photographers and creative people everywhere. And that is a big piece of what we remain committed to doing today through our work. I wanted to thank FotoFocus. They are our sponsor. They help make it possible for us to bring the Aperture PhotoBook Club to all of you. And so thank you to FotoFocus. And I want to encourage everyone, we leave the chat open so you can keep seeing all of the people who are tuning in from all over the world. You can also use the Q&A function, and those questions are sort of fed through me. I might occasionally, I hope not rudely, interrupt Dayanita to ask a question from one of you
Of course.
that connects with something she's saying. But I'd like to turn it over first to my colleague, Michael Famighetti, editor-in-chief of the magazine, and the creative driving force between the new design of Aperture magazine, which we launched this summer. It's,
Fantastic.
as you can see, called The Design Issue. And Michael, do you want to tell us a little bit about your thinking for this?
Yes, thank you for that introduction, Sarah. And thank you, Dayanita, for being here with us. What a special treat to have you. So this is, Aperture, as Sarah said, was founded in 1952. We do many things now. We publish books, we produce exhibitions, we do public programs like this, and we have educational activities. But the organization started with the magazine in 1952. And, as Sarah said, we were founded by an amazing group of photographers and thinkers who got so many things right in the early 1950s, especially in terms of design and super elegant use of typography. It's not that often that we're able to redesign the magazine. I'm lucky that this is the second redesign that I've worked on. The last time was in 2013. Yeah, so there's an example of the old format. So as you can see, the big shift is in format. So we've reduced the size of the magazine, but we have not reduced its scale and presence. The idea was really, we wanted to make the magazine just a little bit easier to hold, a little bit more intimate, easier to sit with. It's just kind of have a more friendly hand feel. And all credit for the redesign is really due to our wonderful designers based in London, Scott Williams and Henrik Kubel of the studio A2 SWHK. They are brilliant graphic designers and really brilliant type designers in particular. So the two kind of headline pieces of news for the new form is the change in trim size, but also the way that we've redesigned the cover of the magazine, centering Aperture's original logo, which is the original logo from 1952. It's a slightly modified version of Futura, I believe. And on the inside, there's some subtle changes that you know, people really interested in graphic design might notice. But for the most part, we're really trying to create a friendly, immersive, reflective space where we can present photographs as beautifully as possible and present text in a way that is engaging for readers of the magazine. And so we thought, what better way to introduce a shift in format with an issue of the magazine focused on the relationships between photography and design. Photography is always taking us into many different conversations. That's the beauty of the medium, or one of its beauties. And so this is an issue looking at how photographers engage with design histories and how design is integral to our experience of photographs, from exhibition design to book design and so on. The issue assembles a range of projects looking at these relationships, and we actually have 3 covers of this issue. One is by, features an image by Luigi Ghiri, looking at his previously unpublished work on commission for Ferrari in the 1980s, which is very much a project on industrial design. David Hart's examinations of architecture and different historical inflection points. And of course, Dayanita Singh's work is featured on one of our covers as well. And I have been messaging Dayanita, I think, for years about her photographs of chairs, chairs designed by the visionary architect, Geoffrey Bava. And so it seemed very natural to ask Dayanita to contribute to this issue. And we ended up publishing a selection of images connected to her studies of work by Bava, and also the contemporary architect Bijoy Jain, the founder of Studio Mumbai. And also, Dayanita was perfect for this issue as one of the most inventive thinkers on the photo book as a form, and rethinking how photographs can be presented and displays, from novel approaches to installation, the book form. And I think, you know, Dayanita creates these amazing book objects that are simultaneously books, art objects, an exhibition, a catalog. They're kind of uncategorizable in the best way. So I thought maybe, Sarah, I can kick it back to you so we can hear Dayanita about...
Because I think you and I were both, and Brianna, we were intrigued that, Dayanita, you shared with us that you're the artist that you are because you went to design school and not art school. And so that you went to you learned photography for a year, but then you had to unlearn that. And so I think maybe we'll dive in by asking you to share, you've prepared some images that I think will help people understand this, who maybe are less familiar with your practice. And then we'll chime in and ask you to, you know, but I think there's some really great things that you prepared. I think people would like to see them.
Well, here goes.
Oh, look at that.
So that's a book I made when I was a student at the National Institute of Design in 1986. And the great thing was there were very few photo books around, so I could make my own rules and use the typography I wanted. It was part of a book design course. And I meant it, Sarah, when I said to you that I am whatever I am today, really because I didn't go to art school, and I only went to photography school for a year, but I spent 6 years in design school. And I made this presentation to share with you, sort of to prove to you how this design education, this design thinking has really shaped my approach to the kind of artist I am. And to it's that design process that we were taught about. And I went to the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad, and the manifesto for which was set up by Ray and Charles Eames, and it was very sort of based on the Bauhaus. But the great thing was there was no photography program. So I learned photography as it which should have been learned, which is alongside as a tool to document furniture we were working on, or chairs, or whatever. But it was for a purpose. And so I had been photographing Zakir Hussain for many winters in the 80s. And so my other schooling comes from traveling with classical Indian musicians. So I find myself in quite a unique education CV between design school and traveling with musicians. So this is 1986. I made a book with Himalayan publishers in Delhi. I thought Zakir should write the text for each photograph, but he couldn't. He was busy. Then I set it all myself. In 2019, I was working with Gerhard and with Steidl, and I showed him the maquette, and he said, "This is fantastic. I'm going to publish the maquette." And so he published the maquette. And he published my diary. This is my diary of the book project.
Your handwriting, Dayanita.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
I wrote the whole book like this. And my reference books was a book on Kashmir, on Calcutta, on Rajasthan, etc. And these were the spiral notebooks that we used, and that's all the remnants of rubber solution. But Gerhard's such a great printer that he made you feel like you can still peel off the rubber solution on the page. So what we did with Zakir Hussain maquette is we printed it so that it would open flat on the wall, so that if Aperture said they wanted to show my Zakir Hussain work, I would tell them buy 44 copies of the Zakir Hussain book, open it clip it onto the wall. These are there's a poster inside, and there's my project diary on the side, which also goes on the wall. The cover, the front slip cover, becomes the opening sequence. And so a whole exhibition was planned with this book in 2019. So that's the cycle for my design thinking. In the beginning, of course, it was just working on the book, and finally the whole package, including, as you will see, the selling of it. So I thought I would just talk about out of the box as what I started to do with photography, and really took it on as a design problem. Like, what is it that I don't like about showing my work in institutions, and I don't like how it gets fixed to the wall? And so I want to build the architecture that will take it away from the wall, but will also change the architecture of the room. And because I studied at NID, and we had to do in our foundation course furniture design, I had some knowledge of joinery and building things. And time again, that has come into what I've been able to make. I can't imagine what I would be like if I didn't have this design training. So the first book object I made was Sent a Letter in 2007. This is shown in a beautiful exhibition that Saurabh Hura curated more recently in Dubai at the Ishara Foundation. It's a box with 7 books inside it. And then each of those books is an accordion fold that becomes an exhibition. And then with the box, we use the cloth that is used to be used for packages to be parceled in India. And these were letters that I made to friends, because I thought I could make letters better in photographs than in words. And 3,000 boxes were produced in India, because I told Gerhard I didn't want them to look like Steidl boxes. And he said, well, then you better make them yourself. And so we made them. So they're all a little bumpy, uneven. They're frayed at the edges. They've really aged depending on the country they're in. But they look like they belong wherever they are. The Aperture one looks a little too clean for my
No,
liking.
don't worry, Dayanita. We'll when we get to that, I'll take it out. But in fact, I was worried it was too dirty to share. So good.
Could you take one of the books out and just open it out?
Sure. Do you want to pull down your screen and I'll do that? So yes, Aperture has sent a letter, and sure enough, which letter would you like me to open?
Well, why don't you open Noni Singh, my mother, since she's in the audience?
Okay, I love. Noni, we were surmising about your lipstick that you might be wearing. So I think we hope you're joining. We hope you're well, and we loved featuring your photographs. I will say one quick digression. In the 70th anniversary edition of Aperture magazine, the reason I have this one here is that Dayanita contributed a wonderful piece around her mother's photographs, which maybe we'll get to, but okay. But to return to this, so you want me to unfold the whole thing?
Yeah, to just pull it out, stretch it
Okay.
out.
All right, here we go. I'm worried, but I'm gonna be brave. I don't,
Yes,
I
perfect.
usually leave this to the professionals, but here I am, just holding it up like this. Hold on, I'm gonna do it with gravity helping. Do you want me to just hold up some of it?
No, that's fine, just for people to understand that it opens
Yeah.
out
Anyway,
and
it's
becomes an
amazing.
exhibition.
So yes, you were
So
saying?
in 2008, I sent a letter to Calcutta Park Street. I was walking to an exhibition I was having, and I saw these empty vitrines, and I was with my friend Adam Fuss, and we walked into the jewelry store, and I introduced myself to the owner, and he said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "If you can give me your vitrines, I can put my book in." So I put it in January 2008 and changed it in January 2018. 10 years on Park Street. You know how museums keep us thinking about footfalls? Well, here you go, right on the road.
Wow.
2008 to 2018.
Amazing.
Amazing.
And then I made a center letter museum and showed it at the National Museum in Delhi, wherever I got a chance. And gradually, center letter, as though on steroids, turned into Museum Bhavan, these large wooden structures I would make to make my own museums, because I had the idea to make a form for what I didn't like about how photography was shown in museums.
Mhm.
And so that's why these structures were made, and I never imagined they would be shown. This is Museum of Chance when it was first shown in 2013 at the Hayward Gallery. And this is recently 2 years ago when it was shown at the Gropius Bau. And at the back, you see the Center Letter Museum. And I wanted to show you this just to share with you that center letter, that little box that's in Sarah's hand, that cost 35 euros at the time, and this massive Museum of Chance, each held the room. Center letter was not small. So it was great for me to see them both side by side. Museum of Chance, of course, came with its own furniture because I don't like the benches that museums offer. And they said, we're not going to give you more crates just because you want to bring your own furniture. And I said, well, watch me. And I built the furniture into the museums.
Fantastic.
But then I wanted a book. And so I made the Museum of Chance book, which title, but this time I said to him, could I have 88 different covers? And he said, complete nonsense, you've really lost it. And I said, no, you see, if I have 88 different covers, then I have an entire exhibition. And you know, everywhere people can't pay for the shipping and insurance, and it costs too much money. And we can't live by your standards all the time. So I would like to show my work as the book. And so somehow he agreed. And that's how I showed it first in Frankfurt at the Moderne Kunst, just L-clipped onto the wall. But you had to have all 88 copies if you wanted to show the entire exhibition. But then I started to make these structures for them, these accordion structures for the book. I can see Michael salivating at the thought of a case like this. And the idea was that you come to the India Art Fair, and while you're sort of bargaining about prices of real, I mean, you know, very expensive artworks, you could just buy this Museum of Chance case and carry it out and take it on your flight. So this was called the Museum of Chance bookcase. And then I made a suitcase, which I took with me to Venice to test, because I thought if I could take those 88 books in 4 suitcases or 2 suitcases, depending on how you showed the front or the back, then I could really just be my own shipping agent as well, because shipping is a big problem, especially when you're shipping from this part of the world. And so there's a catalog that you can just print on an A4 sheet, and it comes. Suitcase Museum is these 2 suitcases, and Sydney Biennale says, we'd like to show your work. And I said, actually, I'm only showing the book now. And so you show 2 suitcases museum, 2 suitcase museums. So you show all my 88 books. And that's how I sort of managed to sneak the book wherever I had the chance to put the book in. And finally, Museum of Chance, which was never meant to be acquired by anyone because I thought it was my mother museum. But I did say to my wonderful gallerist, Jane Hamlin, that, she said, you must be clear. Is it available? Is it not available? I said, it's not available unless you're a MoMA. And somehow, a few months later, and it was in the MoMA, in the inaugural show of the new building, I think it was called, or something like that.
Yes, it was.
And,
that is true.
And Lucy made this beautiful museum of gestures on the wall out of Museum of Chance. And then I thought this was my big opportunity. When Museum of Modern Art has acquired my Museum of Chance, I didn't want it to just remain in the photography or the painting department. I wanted every curator to know what was inside this Museum of Chance, so that the textile curator could curate from my Museum of Chance. And so we invited Sarah, who very kindly agreed to come and look at Museum of Chance, and found, well, you say, Sarah, what you...
Okay, I will say this was so fun. I mean, it was, first of all, you can see there, I'm the registrar. A little earlier, someone had been the director. The invitation to imagine being someone other than who you are, and to realize that no matter who you are, this little girl, or, had as much to teach me about looking at your photographs as I might have thought that I had as a curator. It was such an inspiring moment and experience. And it looks like there are just 4 of us here, as betrayed by Lucy holding a microphone. There was actually a pretty crowded space. But you invited us all to see what we saw in your work. And I think that's one, that sense of participation, that sense of agency, was completely exhilarating, not just to us, but I think it's something that whether you're buying a book or visiting the museum, you really encouraged. For me, you mentioned as we were signing on today that one of the museums that I curated from your Museum of Chance, using these wonderful little almost memory-like cards, was a museum of words, or of words and images. And this was because at the time, my day job was really thinking about Dorothea Lange and the founding moments of Aperture, and Aperture magazine that was founded as a magazine of words and pictures. And so it was interesting that as I was looking through all of these stacks of pictures, that really jumped out at me, because I was thinking about Lange and words and pictures. And it is one of the amazing things as you go through your work, you can construct different paths through the history of the medium, just through your work, and you can memorialize them. And it was just thrilling. And I'm happy that someone took some pictures of that moment in December of 2019.
Yes, it was so special.
It was very special. So thanks for letting me remember that. And that little girl,
you, Sarah.
she was amazing. Okay,
completely.
carrying on.
Could I jump in with one question?
Yeah, wait, sorry.
Yes.
Michael has a question. Yeah.
Oh, Dayanita, it's amazing to see all these examples of these. There's such elegant solutions to both presentation and also just practical limitations of the museum space, of what it means to create an exhibition, shipping. But I'm curious about, just to go back to your education in design at an institute founded by Charles and Ray Eames, this sense of things being modular and flexible and adaptable. Because so often photo books, it's like a photographer arrives at a sequence and that's printed and that's it. And there's one sequence, and maybe you're going to get into this, but I'm just curious about that sense of just things being modular and flexible, and how that's built into these forms you've created.
Yeah, I think it's that thing we used to call design process, you know, and the modular part is really important for budgets, as you know. And so it's really important that my furniture fits inside my museum and is not a separate crate. It's just problem solving. So, you know, when an institution says, oh, we have a problem, and I almost start salivating. It's like, okay, bring it on, because through your problem, some great solution will come up. And so the modular is also to do with how it's going to pack and how you can travel with things. And, you know, with the center letter box, you have 7 exhibitions just sitting on your shelf. You don't even need to ask me if you want to have an exhibition. My archive is in your house. And then if you buy the Museum Bhavan box, which is also made the same size as center letter, and which is one of each of my museums made in a miniature size, because after Museum of Chance got acquired, I suddenly realized that all my museums had been acquired by other museums and therefore would now just sit in storage. And so what would happen to all my friends? And so I went back to Steidl, and he agreed to let me make the same format again. But this time I told him, everyone says the book is not as valuable as everything else because it's mass produced. And I said, what if I make you something that's mass produced and unique? And he said, not another one of your ideas. And I said, yes, we're going to make another 3,000 boxes, and each one is going to be unique. And I came back to India, and I didn't quite know how that would happen. I thought I would buy 3,000 pieces of khadi or something like that, but it would take a year or something to gather all that. And I went to my wonderful friend Tepa's factory and realized there's this wonderful cloth that we all in Gujarat grew up with called achara, which is the undercloth of block printing. And she said, you know, no 2 inches will be the same. And I said, it's perfect. And so we made this box. It was sold for 70 euros. And I didn't let on in the beginning or even now properly that each box is unique. So how do you store it? So it was lovely. I went back to MoMA, I went to the library. They said, we have all your books. And they said, well, I said, where's Museum Bhavan? They said, in the library, in the rare section. I said, well, actually, it's a unique work. And so now it becomes interesting as to where it's going to be, you know.
Yeah, you don't make it easy for the registrar to catalog or categorize anything, that's for sure.
Well, I'm determined to make the book into a form in itself. And that MoMA one day has a department for book objects, not just for printed books and
as long as they don't hire, as long as they don't
objects.
hire Michael, right? As long as they don't hire Michael and take him away from Aperture, I'm strongly supportive of that. So, no, that's wonderful.
So
and
I went back to the same jewelry. Sorry.
No, please keep going.
2018 sorry.
Keep going. Thank you.
Same jewelry store, took down center letter and put Museum Bhavan in.
Amazing.
And then friends started to do their own thing with Museum Bhavan. This is my friend Bilal, who took his partner to Agra, to the Taj Mahal, and then had this opening of Museum of Photography for him in front of the Taj. And that's what I loved, that I had created an object that people could own and live with and build on in their own ways. And finally, I made myself this jacket with which I could stand outside my friend's gallery in Venice and show people my exhibition. And many people passed me by thinking I was trying to sell them something. And then I made the jacket and actually sold it at Callicoon Gallery in New York, where I had a retrospective of all my book objects. I thought if nobody else is interested in it, luckily Foti was interested in it. And I thought, great, I make my own retrospective because nobody else is paying attention to the book. to the book object. So that's my exhibition. It's all on the wall. On the left-hand side is Museum of Chance. You can see center letter. This is Box. That's the jacket. And everything sold. I even had my signing table where I would sit there and individualize, not sign, but individualize the book objects for each person who was able to acquire them. That's the filing bookcase, which was.
Can I pause there? Why
Yes.
why did you not want to sign it? But it's, in other words, in what way do you perceive signing to be distinct from individualizing?
Because I wanted to make each one's copy completely unique. And I do that in various ways. I have a little toolbox. And so that no two books will be the same. It's that same thing about the book is not valuable because it's mass produced. And so, yes, it's mass produced, but if I'm there, I'll make each one unique.
Fabulous.
And then I made a pillow for a little pillow my friend Stella in Venice made for my Go Way Closer book. And I thought that was a suitable pillow. And finally, Gerhard and I decided to make a book called Book Building, which is a book about all my books. But more than that, it's my manifesto for what the book can be. And so I was I'm my own brand ambassador and my own everything. So I have to make my own book and I have to build my own categories. So I use this book to make photo architecture, book object, photo fiction, photo letters, photo biography, gifting the exhibition. We even had a glossary, which is completely unlike any glossary you would imagine in a photo book. And then I had book stories where I invited different writers to write about their favorite book of one of my books. To also create another pool of writers, because you know how it is with photo books. A few writers are used again and again, and they get overburdened. And I wanted people to just have a new roster of names to use for writing about photo books, because we need that, and we need that writing, that critical writing so badly. So just one of the examples is there's Center Letter and how all the forms, Book Building has all my books in it. So all the different ways that Center Letter has been shown. And then I have a CV for Center Letter. Wherever Center Letter has been shown, that becomes the CV. And as you can see, it's one of my most shown works. So, 70 euros, but it is actually my most shown work. And then the trump card in that book is I've done my own DIYs, which I don't think people have realized as yet, except for the Photo Book Museum, which I'll just show you. And this is instructions on how to turn my books into an exhibition. And how to make a pocket museum. So you buy a jacket, and this is the size of pocket you need to put. You need to buy the box. So I'm also telling you how to wear my museum. And then I had made for Aperture a list of my reading list for a photographer. And I put that into the book as well, because I thought it was still relevant. So Aperture is in my book building book as well. And then
we're honored.
Marcus at the Photo Book Museum told me he was having an exhibition called Book Building. He took it seriously. He bought the book, he followed the rules or the DIYs, and he had this exhibition. So there's Center Letter in Cologne. It's all my DIYs together. And yeah, that's it. A book is a conversation with the stranger in the future.
And I think that is so, that is so true. First of all, thank you for that. We usually don't have presentations in the Photo Book Club, but your work is so unique and your approach is so distinctive that to not allow people to really dive into it through seeing all those things situationally just felt cruel. So thank you. That was a really generous and wonderful approach. And I should say, you know, we really at Aperture, we value photo books just as much as you do. We agree that at $35 or 70 euros or whatever the price point is, these are, you know, very important elements of an artist's idea being connected with the public. And one of the ways in which we support that, you know, we publish a few a year, but we have the Photo Book Awards, which are, which we're still hoping to bring you to be a juror of. I'll just reiterate that invitation. But Michael, do you want to talk a little bit about because I think if you're feeling inspired and you made a book in the last year, we want to see it.
Yes, we have a.
Oh, look. Oh, good. And there's a helpful link in the chat too.
You can find
Thank
information in
you.
the chat. But I'm curious, Dayanita, if since you know, I feel like the photo book has had this amazing renaissance and interest, and is being taken, you know, more seriously as a form of art by institutions. Do you find that the people are more receptive now to your way of working, and that you want to exhibit books as the art objects themselves, as opposed to the expectation that a photographer should make a print that's on the wall?
Oh yes, I think I've turned that around for myself completely. I don't think anyone would now ask me for a print on the wall. But I still try to position the book more than people want, you know, like Sydney Biennale, a contemporary art exhibition. And I said, that's all I want to show. And I think it works. It works because I think the photo book can really, or rather the book object can really democratize the art world, you know? It's fine for all the large selling artworks and all of that. But there's another group of people like us. And for me, you know, I don't know if I could spend $5,000 on buying a print of Michael's, but I would love to spend $50 or even $100 on buying a little object. And if it was super special, I might even spend $250 or $300. And photo books, especially the book objects, can work at that level.
Exactly.
And I'll say, I think, I mean, I really think the idea of the democracy of photography and the many approaches into it, you know, when I shared that first image of your mother's photography, it's like people love photography as an Aperture was founded for the amateur, the professional, and the student. And the idea that there's so many ways to get into this conversation. And when you're really thinking about photography's potential, you're doing that. And Dayanita, I don't know what you're about to pick up, but speaking, I saw that Giorgio Mastinou just put something in the chat, and I wanted to pick up something. This is a present for Michael that I didn't buy him, but that Michael bought for himself, but he's letting me share it with you all because I was in Venice to see the biennial, and Michael said, would you mind going by Giorgio's gallery and looking that according to you, Dayanita, Giorgio had these amazing studio boxes. And if Michael doesn't mind, I'm going to take the studio box apart here. And I was so excited. You know, I'm a recovering curator. I'm now a director. I don't buy a lot of art, but I bought one of these for myself too.
Perfect. Yeah, that's my point.
Look at that. You know, it means it's very special to get to own these things and to really think about how we can hold them together. So anyway.
And Sarah, watching you hold that makes me think of something that the Tausif Noor, who wrote a great piece about Dayanita's work for the design issue of the magazine, you know, he talks about how you've noted how family albums have been so important to your thinking about photography, and albums that were, as he writes, wedged under the glass table in their living space, where they seem to vibrate with their own physicality. And then he includes a quote from you where you say, "To me, a photograph is something you touch and you move it and it warps and it gets dented, it's alive." And just seeing the way Sarah's holding,
I can't let go. It's too precious.
Yeah, no, but your solutions for presentation are so much about there's something tactile happening and you're interacting with that. So I'm curious about that relationship between the family photograph and what you do now.
Completely connected, because for me, photography, you didn't make photographs just like that. You make photographs to make albums, which is another form of a book, or you made photographs to cover a glass table and then have a continuing curation going on, where you could keep changing, shifting the images as often as you liked. You didn't like an uncle, you just removed his photograph. So it was only when I came into the art
So I'll
world
take this one away. I won't keep this one in the box.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, I love how you're holding it, and you would never hold a box of silver prints like that.
No.
And I
So
miss
someone
that in
asked a question of,
photography.
someone asked actually, are these hand printed or reproductions? And they are,
Offset printed.
Yeah, beautiful. No, very, very beautiful, but
And no
not,
Steigl. These are done by me.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for asking that question.
And Dayanita, do you want to tell us about what are these photographs we're looking at? What is Studio Mumbai, and what's your relationship?
Speaking of design, yeah.
Oh, Studio Mumbai is, it is really like a philosophy, but I haven't even been to Bijoy Jain's buildings as yet. I'm just so inspired by his studio. And I think of us as fellow seekers. There's something that I'm looking for that I find in his studio, in my conversations with him. And so I've appointed myself as archivist of his studio. Every few months I go and photograph his studio because it keeps changing so much. But he's an incredible, I don't even know if I can call him an architect. Really works like an artist, but works with local material from the ground, a very different way to work with architecture, and very, very inspiring. And I'm sure this is not the last box I'm going to make with Studio Mumbai, because I went to his studio in Milan and I could make another box from there. But then last month I was in his studio in Bombay and I could make another box. So it's just maybe one of the most exciting places for me in India.
Yeah.
Mumbai Studios studio.
Well, I love your photographs of the models in his studio. And, there's this kind of, sometimes they're a little disorienting. You don't know what the scale is. And which also made me think about how you play with scale in your work. Like, Sent a Letter could have been much bigger, but it has this beautiful compression because of this kind of,
yes.
I mean, it's materials are, as you described, like not super precious, but it has a preciousness. There is something that's, it's a museum. But I'm curious if you could just talk about how you think about scale in relationship to your work too, because there is this beautiful compression that happens in a work like that, or even the work at MoMA that we saw, where you have this screen where all the images are set into the screen.
I think that's one of the things I really love about photography, is how it, especially black and white photography, because in a contact sheet, you have no idea of the scale, like these photographs. And so I like the photographs that disorient you. I like to make images that are not just what is in front of the camera. And so playing with scale and then playing with black and white is wonderful. People say, oh, why do you work in black and white? And it's like, I wouldn't have it any other way, because I couldn't play with scale and I couldn't have so much fun as I can have with black and white, because I can really keep pulling the rug from under your feet all the time. And especially in the accordion, you wouldn't be able to tell which is a model, which is a real situation. And that play is what's so exciting for me, both in making the images and then making a form for them. So Sent a Letter had to be this pocket-sized thing that without thinking, you could carry in your suitcase when you go to Milan next week, because you just wanted to have an exhibition for your friends, that it was just effortless. And So there's the drama of scale, but there's also that same design thinking that we started with, that the practicality of scale. Of sure, if I made center letter that size, I could have sold it for 500 euros, but it wouldn't be hanging around people's homes in the way that it does. It wouldn't just travel with them to Agra for one night to have a little opening in front of the Taj Mahal.
Exactly.
And I think actually the question of scale, and you brought it up in that installation from the Martin Gropius Bau in Berlin, where I did have the pleasure of seeing that exhibition installed there. And a little bit like the MoMA galleries, those spaces are so immense, and you command them with things that are intentionally human scaled and intentionally this. And your photograph captured, your installation view captured it perfectly. It's like you, oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Now that's the second time I've done that accidentally. But when you really think, now I've lost my train of thought. But I do think that the question of allowing a very small and intimate photograph, and I think you might even have some in front of you, but how does an intimate object command your attention and invite a kind of relationship with it? So am I correct? You have some things in front of you that you might share?
Like I hadn't sat here for a long time, and I just opened this drawer and I've got this little exhibition set. I was working on these montages, and so I was traveling, and then there are these little prints that are made that are mounted on board, so that in a hotel room, if I wanted, I could quickly set up an exhibition and rework the sequence before I went in to install. So I travel with bundles like this, boxes that have little bundles, because also you never know where you might want to just make a little book for somebody, or might want to set up a little exhibition. And then there's an even smaller scale.
Wait till you see what Michael's going to do in his home when he gets this home with him.
It will occupy a place of pride.
Yeah.
No, so I love that you can do this in photography. The fact that if I say to you, one is the scale, that it can work at this level and it can work wall size. But also now with digital photography, if I said to you, this is my original. This is my original. Those earlier, it was a silver print that was scanned. That was the original. And this was the reproduction. And that's why books weren't valued. And that was my point with the Zakir Hussain book. That when I didn't complete the sentence, that when I made the maquette with Steidl, the idea was to say that this is the original. There are no prints. You can't get prints. You like the work, you show the book.
I mean, it's such a simple and radical gesture all at once. And I think, only in photography could that be true. In other words,
exactly.
Yeah. I love it.
And the book object allows for, this is just one person. People will come up with all kinds of forms. And if we can find this sort of like a whole world at that price point, at that collector base, how do you make it attractive to someone? How do you compete with Amazon? You can order Museum of Chance on Amazon, but you have no idea what cover you'll get. So if you want the cover of me lying on the bed, you have to come to one of the events that I'm doing for the book, because I'm the only one who has the full set. And otherwise,
the same is true for Aperture magazine. So
exactly, I noticed.
We should we very intentionally thought, do we want to create 3 different magazines with those 3 different covers, or is it one ISBN number and that element of chance of, so 1/3 of our subscribers got your cover, 1/3 of our subscribers, but then we thought, got David Hart's, and 1/3 got Luigi Gary's. And then we thought, oh gosh, well, what if people get very, very upset about this? We have to have some way. And so you can, if you didn't get Dayanita's cover, but you really want it, you can order a set of all 3 on Aperture, but it's a little bit like you can order all 87 of your 87? Did I get the number right?
88.
How many
88.
88, excuse me. So, right, there are ways for those people who feel that they
Absolutely.
need to
But
hold.
Sarah, that's part of making a book, to build the
Mhm.
desire for it. You know,
Mhm.
nobody else, no publisher is really going to do all the marketing for you. You have to be out there and really take it in your own hands and see, how am I going to make this an object that people are going to desire? And once people realize there are 3 covers, many people are going to buy 2 extra apertures because they want the full set, because then it becomes something they want to collect.
And I think you're absolutely right. And I think when someone just chimed in on the chat that they got your cover, they're subscribers and they got your cover, and they're happy about that. So there are 2 more questions that I want to get to before we start wrapping this up. One question asked if you have preserved or archived all of your papers and correspondences and designs related to your projects. And if you would consider, I don't know if this person actually has an art that would like to volunteer to do this, but would you consider placing those in an institutional archive for future scholars? In other words, because it's true, you're both open, you have an instruction manual, you're very transparent about how you do what you do. And yet, I think
Yes.
everyone always wants more from you. It is a good question.
Yes.
Have you thought about
No,
this?
I would definitely do that. I haven't saved everything, but my mother has. So in a way, the Zakir Hussain maquette that Steidl published was possible because my mother had saved it all these years. But you know, when you're young, you don't think of saving things. And then my mother's an archivist, so she saved everything. So yes, I do think about.
Thank
I
you,
am beginning to
Noni.
start to think.
Good. Well, if we would, I think we all have lots of good ideas. Just make sure it's somebody with good public access. And I think that sounds great. And there was one other question that I thought was a beautiful one. And it's this: considering the amount that photographers stress over their book sequence, is the making of a modular mobile museum an act of letting go? And was that a contradiction when you first felt it or when you first thought of it?
I didn't like that photography was tied to its sequence, just like I didn't like that photography was tied to the wall in an institution, you know, because photographs change depending on what they are placed next to. But the big daddies of the photo book would tell me it's only a book if it's bound, and no amount of my saying that it's bound by the box would convince them. But I thought it was wonderful to have a set that could work in any sequence. And that actually takes a lot longer, especially in the museums, because I give you 162 prints. You can show 3 of them and they have to work. So that process is actually the most time consuming. To make a sequence is easy, but to make an edit that can work in any sequence, that takes a long time. It just takes time. It's not difficult. It just takes a year or 2 for each body of work.
And do you have, I mean, it's interesting because there's my sister used to say to me that being a curator was just throwing pictures in a random order and then spending enough time to make up a story about why they needed to be that way. And I said, wow, you really think that little of what I've done my whole life. But when you say that anyone can do it, I think it's a good humbling moment for somebody who had, you know, and Michael, actually, I'd be curious to hear what you think of it. This is like what you as an editor, or what I previously as a curator, or what Dayanita as an artist, is it really something that you think anyone could learn how to do, or what advice do you have for somebody who wants to become better at this? I guess maybe I'll ask that of Michael and Dayanita.
Well, I mean, I think we live in an amazing moment where, with self-publishing and, this renaissance of bookmaking, if you go to the New York Art Book Fair or many of these art book fairs, you see, so many people participating in publishing, which maybe used to be more of an exclusive thing. Like you had to be connected to an institution or publisher that did these things. So I think there is, in the way that the book is a democratic form, I think the means of making and distributing books has been democratized too more recently.
Editing is the most difficult skill to learn in photography. Making a photograph is fine. You can do that. But to really make an edit, first you make a sequence, but then to make an edit that can work in any direction also is what I call book building, because that's a way to really get to know your material, So it's a way of dealing with photography, regardless of whether you make a film at the end of it, or you paint all over it, or you set it on fire. But how we're all making so many images. How do you make sense of it? And that's where editing comes in. But I think the advice for editing for me is really that book that Michael Ondaatje did with Walter Murch called Conversations. Walter Murch is the great film editor. So I think editing is to be learned from literature and from film editing, and not so much from photography, because there it's been one kind of, we've thought of it in a sequence. In an exhibition, it's another kind of sequence. But when you start to look at cinema editing, because photography is a young medium, and so we have to look to other forms for inspiration, just like how Michael Ondaatje tells the story and how he just stops short of completing the story. So it's forever ringing in your head. So I think literature editing, literary editing, and cinema editing are great ways to learn editing your own material. Well, and you have to do that.
And Dayanita, how could one say anything after the idea of your work forevering in our heads? I think what a joy to have you with us. What an honor, really. Thank you so much. Michael, thank you for continuing to find ways for us to include Dayanita in all that we do, including the PhotoBook Club. Thank you to Candle Productions and Clark. Thank you to our colleagues, Alex and Brianna, behind the scenes, who do so much for the PhotoBook Club. And thank you to FotoFocus for making this all possible. So today, I think, was also dramatically enlivened by the chat and by all of you participating. So I just also want to say thank you all for your curiosity and for your enthusiasm. And Dayanita, really, beginning
great issue. Really, it's a great issue. Congratulations.
Thanks for plugging Aperture too.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
I think it's a book. No, I wouldn't do that. It's a book. We have to do more about design and photography.
We can continue the conversation.
Let's continue the conversation. Exactly.
Yes,
so
lovely.
Thank you
all.
you
so much.
What a joy. And Dayanita, 11:30 at night, you deserve a good night's sleep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.